Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today because, you know what? We have one of the hardest working people, one of the hardest working persons, one of the hardest working men in politics right now. He is all over the state, ensuring that no longer is Texas going to be the laughing stock of the country with all the resources in the world, and at the same time, the largest uninsured population in the country. This man is going to go out there and take care of Congress and make sure this is a state that is working commensurate with its values. So, folks, before we get started, I want to remind you who we have. First of all, remember, the first thing I ask all of you to do is to share this program. If you're on Blog Talk Radio, the Blog Talk Radio Network, please, folks, do remember to go ahead and tweet, Tumblr, everything else. If you are on Facebook Live, make sure to share the program. You know what the algorithms are doing right now. But anyhow, Texas' next Lieutenant Governor, Governor Mike Collier, discusses winning Texas. Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor Mike Collier traveled throughout Texas and will discuss what Democrats must do to win. Today, I am honored to have Texas Democratic Lieutenant Governor candidate Mike Collier with us. Mike has been traveling throughout Texas explaining to what he will bring to Texas fiscal responsibility as he ensures all Texans are taken care of appropriately. Now, folks, who's Mike Collier? Mike Collier started his career at Exxon, but soon found his way to PriceWaterhouseCoopers, one of the biggest accounting firms in the world with tens of thousands of employees. He served in the audit practice for 10 years, eventually becoming a top aide to the PwC World Chairman. Finally, he served in Houston as a partner for 10 years, leading a team of 24 professionals, providing due diligence, structuring, and valuation services to some of PwC's largest and most sophisticated energy clients. Then Mike helped build a successful Texas oil company, serving as its CFO. As a cop on the beat, Mike built a reputation for rigorous financial analysis, independent decision-making, and a commitment to telling the truth no matter what. If we're going to hold politicians accountable, that's exactly what Texas needs right now. That is exactly what Texas needs right now. And of course, he is a Longhorn, a Texas Longhorn. Yours truly graduated from Texas as well. So this is the man. But anyhow, without further ado, let's welcome Mike Collier. Mike, how are you doing today?
Fine. How are you, Egberto?
All's well. Look, I've been watching your campaign, and I've been watching you all over the state. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Well, okay. Well, I'm happy to do it. Of course, Egberto, you and I have known each other for a long time, and we're neighbors here, and so it's always wonderful to be talking to you. So I'm an accountant and I'm a businessman, and the reason why I'm running for office is because I got angry enough at the state legislature when we cut public education a few years ago. And my wife Suzanne and I have been married 29 years, and we raised 2 sons. They all came through the public school system here in Houston, and I was a partner at PriceWaterhouseCoopers for many years. And of course, I went to high school in Central Texas, in Georgetown, Texas, marched in the band, and marched in the Longhorn band when I went to UT.
There you go.
But the main event for me was to come to Houston. We got here, we lived in Austin, lived in Dallas. We got here in 1997, and so we raised our family here. And then I've always felt like politics would work a lot better if the people in it developed a skill in the private sector and then offered it up to the public, their skill to the public, do good work, don't stay too long. And so I always knew that I would do something in public policy with my financial and accounting skills. And it was in 2011 that I was reading, sitting right here. I'm at home this afternoon. We just got back from Dallas. Was reading in the newspaper that the Texas legislature was going to cut public education by over $5 billion. And they told us it was because we had a deficit coming, and I smelled a rat. And I thought, now, wait a minute. If property taxes pays for public education and property taxes are going up, why are you telling us that we have a deficit and we've got to cut public education? And I began to suspect that they were gaming us. And I'm very passionate about public education for a lot of reasons that we can discuss. I think it's so important. Well, it turns out I was right. That's exactly what they did. And so I decided that, to hold politicians accountable, you got to run against them. And I ran for comptroller in 2014, and I concluded to hold them accountable, you not only have to run against them, you got to beat them. And we've been working on this campaign for lieutenant governor now for almost 2 years. And we've only got about 27 days left until early voting, but I am fighting like you can't believe, and we're all over the state. Anyway, so that's the backstory.
Well, I mean, that is a great story, Mike. I think it's very important for you to say something because you mentioned something about the schools that very few people know about. And I think it's something that we need to embed not only in the folks here in Houston, not only in the folks in Dallas, not only in the folks in Austin, but all over the country. Tell us exactly the scheme that's been that's been affected by the current Texas legislature under the auspices of your opponent.
Well, so my opponent is not a friend to public education. I don't think he has any interest in having great public schools. In fact, he's quite the opposite. He's a proponent of vouchers, which is really a means of taking money away from taking money away from public schools and then using it to defray the cost of private schools. It's just an awful idea on so many levels. It is very damaging to public schools in and of itself. It's also very unfair because you're taking, in essence, property taxes from working men and women and sending it over to the affluent. So it's just, vouchers are a terrible idea. We need to have great public schools. And because Dan Patrick, my opponent, is not interested in great public schools, in fact, I would argue that he's hostile to public schools, he's behind the funding cuts that have made it almost impossible for many of our teachers to do the job they want to do. If the class sizes are too large, which they are in Texas, then the teacher's got a real challenge. And then if you don't have special education teachers, and we have far too few in Texas, then you find that the teachers just can't teach. And, they decided they wanted to be teachers, and then that's what they want most is to be able to teach. Dan Patrick, my opponent, has systematically cut education funding and created a real difficult situation for teachers. And that's the work that I'm in. And the other thing that happened, Egberto, is because the state has cut funding so severely to public education, that it shifted the burden to try to make ends meet onto the backs of homeowners who were paying property taxes. So now we have a double problem. Right? So our property taxes are too high, and there's still not enough money for public education. And you can't solve one problem without solving the other. They come together. And so that's really the work that I'm in. And let me just say this. Why am I so passionate about public education? I just want to say a couple of things. And I think a lot of people viewing me will agree with this, but it needs to be said. We have a moral obligation to the young people in this state, in my opinion. I think it's a moral imperative to give every child, regardless of the circumstances of their birth, a chance to succeed. Education is the great leveler. And those of us that cherish equality and equality of opportunity are very passionate about public education. And then when you think about the kinds of jobs that we'll be creating in 3 years, and 5 years, and 10 years, and 15 years, our students have to be smart. They have to have critical thinking skills. They have to have STEM skills. And so we aren't attending to those. So of all the things the state does, the two, in my opinion, that are most important are healthcare, which I hope we have time to talk about, and public education. And I'm pro-public education, and my opponent is hostile to public education. It's very well known, very well established. He cannot escape accountability for what he's done and how difficult he's made things for teachers in Texas.
Now, there's a very important point that you've made in the dialogue that you just gave there, and that is the shifting of the burden from the state to the localities. And I don't think when a lot of folks see their home taxes going up and thinking it's the local government's fault, we have a state government that goes ahead and it preaches all of the times that they've cut taxes, but have they really? So my question to you is, or what do we need to do to ensure that folks understand that it's not a thing about them cutting taxes, it's a thing of them shifting the burden, and in a lot of times your taxes indirectly get increased?
Well, there's no question. You're right, Egberto. There's no question. I mean, property taxes are going up. School property taxes are going up much faster than school spending. Now, if you think about it, and the reason for that is the state is systematically withdrawing its support, so we have to put in more. We're putting in more as homeowners, and we're not getting more for it. The state is putting in less money. So indirectly, it's our property taxes going to help the state pay its bills, as contrasted to our property taxes going to help the school pay their bills. It's a bad answer. They've been doing this for a long time, and they'll deny it. My opponent will deny it. They're blaming everybody under the sun. They're blaming counties for high property taxes. They're blaming cities for high property taxes. They're blaming school districts for high property taxes, and they are not being sincere. And if you talk to any county commissioner, they'll tell you, I'm right. If you talk to any school board trustee, they'll tell you, I'm right. If you look in the budget itself, and for those that want to take some time to look at the budget, I happen to be a CPA, so I look at budgets. I enjoy looking at budgets. If you go to Article 3, turn to page 5, scroll down to Note 3, find the second paragraph, and find the second sentence in the second paragraph. It states, property values and the estimate of local tax collections on which they are based shall be increased. It's right there in the state budget, because what happens is, when the state is doing its budget, it sends economists out to figure out how much higher will property values go. Then it calculates how much more money will throw into public education. Then it does the math and says, great, then this is how much less state money we'll put in. And therein lies the problem. And unless we address the root cause of the problem, the state doesn't have any more money. I mean, that's the problem. Unless we address the root cause of the problem, it will only get worse. I'm addressing the root cause of the problem, and my opponent refuses to address the root cause of the problem. And now I'll tell you what the root cause is, and then you'll see why he won't touch it and why I will. There's more than one problem with state finance. I'm going to focus on one because it's the one that I'm going to work on as lieutenant governor. There is a flaw in the property tax law, so the owners of large commercial and industrial properties, like the owners of refineries and petrochemical plants and downtown skyscrapers and the rest, there's a flaw in the property tax law. They can sue the appraisal district. They can reduce their taxes below what is called for in the Constitution. They are cheating us. They're cheating schools. And the number is huge, Egberto. It's $5 billion a year. $5 billion a year is missing from the owners of the large commercial and industrial properties. And there are other problems, but that's the big one. And everyone knows about it, Egberto. And legislation has been proposed to fix this many times over many years, but the legislation always dies in committee, and there's campaign finance involved, and that's not going to surprise you. So we have to close that loophole. Now that leads me to the power of the lieutenant governor. For those that maybe are not as familiar as you and I are, lieutenant governor is the most powerful position in the state. Why? Because the lieutenant governor can compel a vote.
Right.
The Senate has never voted to close that loophole. They all know about it, but they've never voted to close that loophole, so they aren't held accountable. So the lieutenant governor can compel a vote, and they will vote when I'm lieutenant governor. And when they do, who is going to have the courage to vote to keep that loophole open when they know that I'm going to chase them right back into their district and say, look, your senator voted to keep that big corporate loophole open, and it's costing you money, and it's hurting our school. So that's the solution, Egberto. Now, as I say, there's other things out there, but that's the only thing that we have to do. You know, lieutenant governor gets a 4-year term, 2 legislative sessions, and so that's how long it'll take to get that loophole closed and get that money recovered. But we will, and that's how we begin to solve the problem.
Now, Mike, I mean, I love hearing that, and yes, you and I know about that. However, it is imperative that we get others to know about that. So what are you doing other than going around the state? I know you've been just about in every county as well. How can the activists out there be helpful to get that information out? Because one of the reasons I think let me back up. Dan Patrick doesn't want to debate you because you're going to come with the way things are.
That's right.
So he's running from you like crazy. He doesn't want to debate. Has he committed yet?
Right. No, he's committed not to debate. The funny thing about Dan Patrick is this. He'll debate anything that moves. In his own words, he cherishes debates. He has never once failed to debate his opponent. He's even dashed out there and debated people that he's not running against. 4 years ago, when he was running for lieutenant governor for the first time, he not only debated his opponent, Leticia Vanderpute, but he dashed over and debated Julian Castro, just for grins. Now in this race, he's asked Geraldo Rivera to debate him, but he won't debate me. There's only one person he's ever encountered that he won't debate, and that's me. Why? Because I've got the facts, and he's been faking it, and he knows that I'll slaughter him in a debate. So he's not going to debate. But to your point, what can we do to get this job done? First of all, in terms of the campaign that I'm running, 2018 is a different world. I ran in 2014, and the technology has changed dramatically. We are running a very high-tech, very high-touch campaign. That's why you see me all over the state. I mean, we're doing 2 and 3 appearances a day, not just a week, but 2 or 3 appearances a day. This is the first time that I've seen my house in a long, long time. And I'm only here for a day, and then I'm just basically going to repack a suitcase and off we go. So it's a very high-touch campaign because we're out talking to voters, which is a real joy. And it's a very high-tech campaign. And so what we're doing is campaigning digitally. And we're finding, what I learned when I ran for comptroller is that you don't win by changing people's minds. Mm-hmm. It's just too difficult to change people's minds. You win by finding people of like mind and then giving them a reason to vote for you. And so that's the nature of the campaign. So it's very high-tech, very high-touch. And it's working brilliantly. You know, the polls, Egberto, and perhaps you've seen them, they show us, there's one poll that has us within 2 points of Dan Patrick. And that's before you even consider the turnout. And Democrats are going to turn out in a big way. So this is a winnable race. Now, it leads to your question, what can activists do? A couple of things activists can do. First of all, join me in social media. If you like what you hear and want to help me, you become a social media champion. So you go on Facebook and like me, go on Twitter and follow me. The young people can explain the other things that we do, Instagram and so forth. So I have young people here with me. I complain about young people because I'm an old people, but these young people, I mean, that's how we're going to win. So be a social media champion, and then after you've liked me and joined me and the rest, when we send something out, share it to as many people as you can and recruit them to join. It's remarkable what you can do digitally. That's very important. Second, go vote. I mean, register to vote and vote. I don't think we have to tell activists that. They do. But find others. And we're going to win this thing, as Lupe Valdez says all the time. And I just love Lupe, and I love what she says, which is this election is not going to be bought. This election is going to be fought, which means the people that listen to this, if they're motivated to help me win, then they're going to tell as many people as they can, and they're going to ask them to tell as many people as they can, because that's how we win. What we're not going to do is take money from PACs. I'm very proud. I'm in the same place as Beto. I'm not campaigning on it the way Beto is, because there are some PACs that I'm taking money from, and I'll tell you who they are. First of all, the Texas Society of Certified Public Accountants has given me money, because I call them and ask them, because I'm a member, and we're talking accountants. And then also AFL-CIO and the various organizations within AFL-CIO and the teachers' organizations, because those are hard-working men and women, and I'm fighting for them. That's all the PAC money that I'm taking. Everything else comes from individuals. So, as Lupe says, this isn't going to be bought. It's going to be fought. But the last thing I'll say is, what a joy it will be to be lieutenant governor when I'm not beholden to anybody except my fellow Texans. Then we can close those loopholes, recover that money, put it into public education. There's a lot that we need to do with healthcare, and we need to kill gerrymandering, which is a huge part of what I need to accomplish as lieutenant governor. And I do hope that people will help me. Last thing I'll say, Berto, is we know there are enough Democrats to win. And when we're within single digits, as we are, with 27 days left for early voting, if Democrats vote, we will win. If Democrats turn out, we will win.
There's no doubt about that, Mike. And let me tell you, better as I see it, based on, I live in a very Republican area, and I imagine you do as well. Believe it or not, sitting down in a coffee shop where all these oil company guys I talk to on a daily basis, I find it amazing how many are fed up and claim when they're talking to me, that is, that they're actually giving others a look because of how badly things have been run. So I think it is something that you have to take into consideration.
Oh, I think there's no question. You know what, I ran in 2014, but I will say this, Alberto, I learned in 2014 that we made the same mistake in 2014 that was made in previous election cycles in Texas. You just assume because Republicans are doing such a bad job,
right,
that you can campaign Republicans and then they'll come vote for you. And,
right.
and every time we do that, we get our heart broken. So the right answer in 18, and this is what you'll see out of Beto and all of us, is that we aren't trying to change, anybody's mind. We're not trying to get Republicans to suddenly become Democrats. We are taking our message to Democrats. We're working on what do Democrats want from their political leaders. How do you communicate with Democrats? How do you reach them?
Right.
That's what we're doing. But we're doing it and making as much noise as we possibly can, because there are folks that are coming looking for us because they're associated with a party or they're just disgusted with politics, and they're looking for that voice. They're looking for those folks that say, look, I'm not really a politician. I'm trying to solve problems here. I'm a neighbor. And so those people, they'll find us and they'll come join us. And as a practical matter, I think quite a few are, which is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, I have a question for you from somebody listening on Facebook Live, and that is, please ask Mike Collier what he thinks is the difference between fiscal responsibility and austerity. Mike Rudnan asks.
Well, that's a wonderful question. When I think of fiscal responsibility, the first thing I think of is honesty. The funny thing is, the vast majority of Texans, the vast majority of Americans know that you have to raise taxes to do the things that we need to do. And something as simple as roads, water infrastructure, but education. I mean, there's a moral dimension to our budget. And most Texans, most Americans recognize that we have to pay taxes because there's things that we need to do collectively. However, they worry, is my money being wasted? Do I trust the people that I'm giving my money to? That, in my opinion, is the root cause of the problem. I think the most important aspect of fiscal responsibility is trust, is integrity. That's hugely important. And that's one of the things that I'm driving towards. As a CPA, that's what we do for a living. I've often said that my campaign is an experiment. Can you actually win a big and important office on the basis of being an honest financial guy? Wouldn't that be interesting when I win? So integrity is the coin of the realm as it relates to fiscal responsibility. Austerity, that's more complicated. And I'll tell you what, there are 2 points of view here. And you hear this from the Republicans all the time. They want to shrink government, get rid of it, and that doesn't work. And there's greed in that. There's greed in saying, I'm not putting any of my money in the center because I don't want to teach those children. I know those pretty hard words, but I hear those words. So when I think of austerity, sometimes I think of the dark side, which is greed. And greed has overwhelmed the judgment of an awful lot of really good people. And it leads to the Empower Texans guys out in West Texas that underwrite all of these Republican politicians, and they charge in there and say, get rid of government, shrink it, get rid of it. Well, what about women's health, right? Now, who's going to put up the money to make sure that women who don't have access to health care services can have access to health care services? What about mental health? What about child protective services? I mean, we have to raise money for those things. And when we think of austerity, what's happening in our country and in our state is really greed. And that's one of the things that I'm campaigning against. One of the things I love to talk about on the campaign trail, because it really brings us together, is compassion. It's interesting. Compassion is gone from public policy in Texas, I say, and we need to bring it back. Now, who's talking about bringing compassion back? Is it the religious right? I mean, are they saying the words compassion? Have you ever heard that from Dan Patrick? No. I'll tell you who's bringing compassion back to public policy are the Democrats. Now, we have to be fiscally responsible. We must be honest. We must make wise decisions. But we also must govern with compassion. That's what it means to be a Democrat, in my opinion.
Excellent. Let me go to a caller on the phone, and then we can get into healthcare. Okay, caller, I think this is a Skype caller. Come on in.
Yes, my friend. This is Mike from Singapore. How are you, everyone?
Very good. From Singapore.
Yes. We appreciate you guys make sense. Your radio show, it's cover everything that many people don't want to, because they I mean, for reasons that they don't want to change. You know, if, as you meant before, you know, they want to nationalize Medicare in United States, so they give you a $700 check for your Medicare, and then they say, go ahead and buy insurance.
I tell you what,
and your insurance for the...
And it doesn't.
Yeah,
it's
go
not
ahead,
enough to actually pay for it. So let me get Mike. So we're about to go into healthcare, my friend. So stay on and let's get into healthcare. And then if you have questions after that, we come back to you.
Sure,
okay?
sure.
Thank you
Sounds
so
good.
kindly. Thank you so
Bye.
kindly. Okay, Mike. The thing that I talk a lot about here in Texas. And this isn't language for you to adopt, but it is language that I've started adapting because I think it is so important. We have a party in this state, in this country, that constantly talks about being pro-life. We call them anti-choice, but as far as pro-life is concerned. Yet, whether you like the Affordable Care Act or not, let's forget about liking it or not, you had the opportunity to put 1 million people on insurance for free for the first 3 years, 10% thereafter. My question to you, why aren't we strongly saying that the 2,000 Texans or more that die every year from the lack of insurance as a direct result of what the Republican politicians have done in Texas, why don't we just come straight out and say that for all practical purposes is murder?
Well, it's very bad. I'll tell you that the fact that we allow allow people to go without insurance, which causes a lot of them to, they die. It's true. It's unconscionable. It's morally wrong. There are programs out there that allow us to do this, and we should do the right thing. I believe we should expand Medicaid. We should have done that a long time ago. Expand Medicaid, then between 1 million and 1.5 million hardworking Texans will have access to health care. And if you think about it, these are hardworking Texans, and I keep going over this again and again and again, particularly with my Republican friends. These are hardworking men and women. They got the best job they can find, maybe the best 2 jobs they can find. If they could make more money, they would make more money. But they're doing the best they can, but they can no longer afford health care. Why? Because wages have stagnated, but the cost of health care has gone up. It's not their fault. There's not a darn thing they can do about it. They are subject to macroeconomic forces. And expansion of Medicaid, this program recognizes that. And it's a very, very sensible thing to do, and it's a very, very good financial deal for Texas. We'll have to pay about $1 billion a year, but the federal government will pay about $9 billion a year, and then we'll draw taxes off that $9 billion, which will cover us for the $1 billion that we've spent. There's a very high quality economic analysis done by the Pyramid Group that says that for every dollar we spend, we get $1.30 back. So it's really a smart thing to do. The Republicans have blocked it for ideological reasons, and that's just not right. The broader issue is that health care is a right. Health care is a fundamental human right. And the fact that Republicans ignore this, don't expand Medicaid, refuse to discuss some of the features of the Affordable Care Act, which are really, really quite beneficial for all of us, is just unconscionable. And they're doing it for ideological reasons. And let me tell you something. Texans don't support what they're doing. Let's talk about pre-existing conditions for a second. The Affordable Care Act protects us, if you have a pre-existing condition, from losing your health care. So what are the Republicans doing? And Texas is leading the charge. GOP in Texas are leading the charge to cancel protections for Texans with pre-existing conditions. And if they're successful, and they won't be because we're going to beat them, but if they were successful, according to the Kaiser Foundation, 4.5 million Texans would lose health care just like that. And countless more would find it to be unaffordable, so they'd ultimately lose their health care. So we are going in the wrong direction. Now, once we expand Medicaid, and once we have a patient financial bill of rights that provides for absolute protection, Texans with pre-existing conditions, both of which are important parts of my platform, there's still more work to do. The insurance arrangement that we have now is just a disaster. I don't claim to be an expert in single-payer system is a federal thing and not a state thing. Ultimately, I'll weigh in on it. I do think that we need at least a single-payer option. The way I like to refer to it is we need a safe harbor, right? So you might choose to buy insurance from a private insurance carrier, but why not be able to buy into Medicare? So at least everybody knows that you have a safe harbor. You have a place to go so that you can get health care, and you know that you can get health care. And that would be smart, and you could organize it so that it's economically sensible. You could organize it so that people who want choice can have choice, and that's the right thing to do. One of the biggest differences between Democrats and Republicans in this day and age is that the Democrats want to work to solve the problem because we view health care as a right. What Republicans think is that I got mine, good luck getting yours. And we outnumber that. And so that's where we need to go in terms of health care. As to my friend in Singapore, I'd just like to say that I've been to Singapore many times. I love Singapore. I ate drunken prawn there one night, which the folks in Singapore would know all about. And I don't know how many times I had to fly from Houston to Narita Airport in Japan, down to Singapore, and up to Kuala Lumpur. And there's a hotel in the Singapore airport where you can get 4 hours sleep and have a wash, and then show up on a commuter flight to Kuala Lumpur, fresh as a daisy. And I did that many, many times in my professional life. And I just love Singapore. I think it's fabulous.
Absolutely. Now, Mike, going back to healthcare, there's something that I wonder many times if we're making folks aware of. One of it is, I find it interesting that Republicans, a large part of the Republican base is in rural areas. Rural areas. My question to you is, by not accepting the Medicaid expansion to Affordable Care Act, hospitals in rural areas have been suffering. They've been closing, which even if those folks, for the rural folks that have insurance, a lot of times they can't get their health care close to home because, again,
yeah, that's right.
Now, are you and others pressing that issue to the folks to let them understand the reasons why their hospitals in these small towns are closing, the reason why they have to travel so far for health care?
Well, there's no question. I mean, the economic underpinnings of the healthcare industry are changing, and that doesn't surprise anybody. Change is always what we're confronted with, and one of the manifestations of change is that the economics of these rural hospitals don't support them, and they're closing. And dozens of hospitals in rural Texas have closed. And we also have instances where you've got hospitals, but you don't have any specialists. Excuse me. So the procedure you need is not available to you. There's some places out in West Texas where if you're a woman and you're pregnant, you got to go to a different town to deliver that baby, sometimes hours away. That's really not a good answer. Excuse me. So expanding Medicaid is a great first step in terms of solving the problem with hospitals that are closing. And we need to take that step. Also, believe it or not, there's a linkage between school funding and hospitals closing, because if you're stripping resources away from these schools, you're stripping economics out of these communities. A lot of our Texas communities, the school is a big economic engine, and you're stripping resources away from the public schools, and that creates a vacuum, as it were. Wealth leaves the community, and so that influences it. Also, the economic vitality of some of our non-urban cities is something we should be talking about. If you had more jobs in rural Texas, you'd have more hospitals in rural Texas. And something as simple as broadband, so that people in rural Texas can get on the internet, will drive a huge change in terms of our economy. You can't start a business. I mean, you can't start a business in rural Texas if you don't have high-speed internet, and then we don't. And so those are the sorts of things. So all of these things need to work together so that you end up having medical care that you need when you're living, outside one of the major cities. If we value rural Texas, and if we cherish our rural Texan neighbors, and I do, most Texans do. I mean, rural Texas is a Texas treasure. Then we would take these steps to put more money into public education. That would be good. Expand Medicaid, high-speed internet, and the other things. And that would make a big difference in terms of specialists and hospitals post-EU.
Excellent. Folks, we're speaking to Mike Collier. He is the Democratic candidate for Texas Lieutenant Governor. Again, Mike, thank you so kindly for being here. I think it's very important. Now, we've spoken about education. We've spoken about healthcare. I think the other major issue that we need to speak about is the environment, because with Donald Trump changing regulatory regulations, I mean, we have areas in this town, and again, it always seems to be the same. it's areas where the GOP has a whole lot of folks that vote for them. It seems like they just dump on those folks. Now look at what they're doing. Cancer Alley is going to become Metastatic Cancer Alley based on the new regulations that are being passed.
Right. Well, we have a lot to talk about in terms of the environment. And where do you begin? Relaxing all of the environmental laws is a very, very bad answer. I mean, I know the Republicans say, yeah, but we're going to make a lot more money. Well, fabulous. You're going to make a lot more money, and you're going to kill people, and you're going to wreck our planet. That doesn't make any sense at all. So we really need, we get one planet, and we need to make sure that we treat it right and we turn it over to our children so that they get to enjoy the same planet we do. So we need to hold companies to a very, very high standard, and I don't like what I see in terms of relaxing all those standards. If you have wasteful regulations that are outdated, they don't make any sense, or if they're unfair, if the engineering is not right, clearly you must always prune and tend to your regulatory environment because you don't want to overdo it. However, you still have to have regulations, and you've got to hold people to a very high standard because we've got to keep our environment. And I'm very concerned about the direction we're going in terms of environmental regulation. And then also, let's talk about climate change. I made my living. I'm an accountant, but clients have always been energy-related companies. And so I know the industry very well, the oil industry very well. And the oil industry was the last to accept that climate change is real. And we know that. However, the oil industry, all the senior executives, they all agree. They're all scientists. They're all engineers. That's the nature of the industry. So climate change is real. So we have to act. And we've got to act now. Now, what I think we ought to do is two things. The first thing we do is convert from coal-fired power generation, which is very dirty and creates a whole lot of CO2, to gas-fired power generation because it's much cleaner. I consider that economic triage because we've got the gas infrastructure. And so we should do that first and do that right away. And then, of course, you got to hold everybody to a very high standard in terms of operating. You don't want methane leakage and the rest because that contributes to CO2, to global greenhouse, global warming. And then Texas should also be the leader in terms of renewables. That's what we do is what we lead. It's technology-led, and we're a very technology-oriented state. We understand the energy industry like the back of our hand. We've got a lot of sun. We've got a lot of wind. We've got a lot of waves. We've got it all. So Texas should be the undisputed champion of renewables. So those are the things that we need to do. Now, the other things we need to do in terms of the environment, there's two broad categories. We've got parts of the state where there's too much water, where we have storms. We're still recovering from Harvey. So we need to take the steps to make sure that we can handle these storms when they hit. Part of it is drainage and flood patterns and flood control and the rest, which we haven't tended to. And you ask anybody who's house flooded, they don't like what they see in terms of managing floodwaters. And then storm surge protection. If a Category 5 hurricane ever hit the Houston Ship Channel, none ever has. If it ever did, it would be devastating beyond description. A lot of people would die. Chemicals that would be released, that'd be the end of the bays and the estuaries that are downstream of that. So we need to do those things. And then parts of the state don't have enough water. And there's no mistaking, we're there. We have reached the point now where our growth and our demands on fresh water exceed the supply of fresh water. And folks are starting to fight each other. And we need to tend to that. And there's several ways to approach this from a regulatory standpoint. We can get into that if you'd like. But overarching all of this is conservation. Now, there's only one way for Texas to keep up with its freshwater requirements, and that's to use those freshwater molecules more efficiently. The other way I like to think of it, Egberto, is if you got a freshwater molecule which is really, really valuable to us, and if you have salt stuck to it, it ain't. You got to get that salt away from that molecule. There's two ways to get that salt away from that molecule. Either we do it through desalination, which is difficult and expensive, or Mother Nature does it for us. It's called rain. But the point is that we should treat each one of those freshwater molecules as a precious resource and use it as efficiently as possible before we get a salt molecule gets stuck to it. And so it's all about conservation. Much better management of storm runoff, much better management of our streams and our tributaries, much better management of our aquifers, much better management of wastewater and so forth. That's where we need to go as a state. Time's up. We have to act now.
You know, it's scary because, I mean, we listen to somebody like you speak, a very competent person who will become, or who will and must and should become our next lieutenant governor. But it is ironic when you put, it is clear why Dan Patrick won't debate you. So I'm going to ask it this way because I want to do a little slick with this stuff here. Hey, Mike Collier.
Yeah.
Why is it that Dan Patrick won't debate you?
Well, it's because he's been raising property taxes and lying about it.
Now, what is it that Dan
Let's
Patrick
start
knows
right
that you
there.
don't?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What is it that Dan Patrick knows that you don't?
Well, he knows that he's responsible for property taxes that are up. He knows that he's responsible for, am I still on the screen?
Yeah, there
He
you go.
knows there we go. He knows that he cut teacher health care benefits dramatically, and there are teachers now that can't afford their medicine. He told teachers that you can trust them forever, but you can't. He cut public education funding dramatically. He's wasted everybody's time on bathroom bills, which is nonsense. You know, if he's so worried about bathrooms, he should ban Republican politicians from using them, because more Republican politicians have been caught doing bad things in bathrooms than the entire transgender community. Where do we start? Somebody asked me the other day, what has he done well? I can't think of anything. So he's got to go, and that's why he won't debate me.
Now, you know, we need to set a motion out there to get a debate. I really would love to see a debate between both of you because, I mean, one is making sense. One is telling Texans, if you elect me, this is how your life will change. The other one is telling you, oh, there are those guys trying to get into the bathroom. Oh, I mean, it is, there's no comparison whatsoever. You know, I mean, nothing against radio show hosts, but I mean, I think we could use another one, you know? So Dan Patrick could go back and do that, don't you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's, you know, you can compare and contrast Dan Patrick and me on a number of different dimensions. You know, for example, I'm pro-public education. He's hostile to public education. I'm pro-property tax reform that works. He's faking it. We should kill gerrymandering. I hope we have time to talk about gerrymandering. He would never kill gerrymandering. So you could compare and contrast us on all the issues that really matter to Texans, but you can also compare and contrast us on something that's even more fundamental than that, which is that Dan Patrick panders. He's a radio shock jock. He does not even attempt to solve problems. Doesn't even try. I am the exact opposite. I don't pander. I'm not sensational. I am an accountant, and I am a problem solver. Now imagine what happens if you have a lieutenant governor who gets up in the morning and says, hey, let's make this a better state. We got a problem with water. Let's go to work and solve it. We got a problem with health care. Let's roll up our sleeves and solve it. We got a problem with property taxes. We got a problem with public education. Let's solve these things. Let's bring people together and solve them. Dan Patrick doesn't bring people together to solve problems. He divides people to manipulate the electoral outcome so that he can have more power, and that ain't right.
Why is it that we need Mike Collier as the next Texas lieutenant governor? This is why. Anyhow, let's go ahead and talk about gerrymandering. What will you do? I think redrawing the districts come up in 2020. Talk to me about it.
Sure. Well, so states, and we should do this too, we should go to an independent redistricting commission so that you take at least 1 degree of separation from partisan politics. Because we want voters to pick politicians. We don't want politicians to pick voters. I happen to believe that gerrymandering is the root cause of our political difficulties in our country. Because what happens is, and you know, gerrymandering's been around since the late 1800s.
Right.
And it's always been comical, a bit of a nuisance, but it became a malignancy in the 2000s because of big data and computing horsepower. Because these districts, congressional districts, are drawn with such brutal precision that almost every district in every state and in the nation is either pure Republican or pure Democrat. Now think about what that means. If you're, and it's both parties. It's not just one party, it's both parties. Let's say you're a Republican in a Republican district. You want to keep your job. You never have to worry about a Democrat in your district, ever. The only thing you have to worry about is another Republican. And the only way another Republican is going to beat you is to be more Republican than you, to be further to the right. Democrats do this as well, to be further to the left. So what that means is, if you're a congressman or congresswoman and you go to Washington, your number one duty, if you want to save your political neck, is to fight the other side and then come home and pound your chest and say, I'm the one that you can trust because I fought the other guys, which means that compromise is gone in democracy. And compromise is what makes democracy work. Therefore, gerrymandering is destroying democracy. In fact, I would say that gerrymandering has destroyed democracy. We are not making good decisions. And so we have to change that. Now imagine what life is like if you have an independent redistricting commission with a view towards having Democrats and Republicans and independents and all libertarians and green have all parties in a district. Now you're the congressman or you're the congresswoman. You go to Washington, you do your best, serve your country, and you come home, and everybody's mad at you. But that's a good thing, because then you have to be a statesman and bring the people in your district together and meld varying points of view and provide leadership. Democracy will work on that basis. It did once, but it's not working now. And the first thing I'll say is, of all the things that I would really love to do as lieutenant governor, such as change the dialogue around public education, solve the problem for retired teachers, and give them their benefits back, they're hurting, solve the property tax problem, deal with health care as we discussed. All of those are temporary if you think about it. But killing gerrymandering is permanent. I mean, that is forever. That makes all the other things possible in perpetuity. I'll say this. If I'm honored to be the next lieutenant governor, I will bet every penny of my political capital and risk re-election to kill gerrymandering, because we've got to do it to save our democracy and to save our country.
Oh, I am in complete agreement with that. I mean, what occurred? If you think it's bad in Texas, if you see some of the redistricting that they did in Pennsylvania, it's amazing how they end up with the amount of Congress people they do. One side ends up with, even though they don't necessarily have to win the popular vote. It's crazy. It's completely irresponsible for democracy.
Right.
Now, Mike, what have I not asked you? I've asked you the major issues: environment, gerrymandering, healthcare, education. What have we not touched on that you want this audience to know?
Well, I think the only other thing to discuss is whether or not, how in the world does it work if you have a Democrat who's the lieutenant governor and you've got a lot of Republicans in the Senate. The lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate. The lieutenant governor decides what we vote on. But there's going to be a lot of Republicans in there. I hope there's going to be fewer Republicans. There are a lot of really good Democrats running the state Senate. But still, there's going to be a lot of Republican senators. And so the question is, will this work? Can we have a Democrat who's the lieutenant governor and the president of the Senate and have Republicans sitting in those chairs? And I would say the answer is yes, and I'll tell you why. I think Texans are more alike than we are not alike. I think the problem is not necessarily the Republicans in the Senate. The problem is leadership.
Right.
The problem is Dan Patrick. He runs that Senate in a dictatorial fashion. He killed the two-thirds rule when he first came in. It used to be that it took two-thirds of senators to put a bill on the floor before it would come up for a vote. He killed that because he wanted to consolidate his power. It used to be the lieutenant governor would distribute chairmanships across two parties. Dan Patrick killed that because he wanted to consolidate his power. He made himself as powerful as he possibly could be, and then he took us to a place that Texans don't want to go. It's going to cost him his job, and when he's gone, then the Senate will begin to function again, and we're a lot more alike than we are not alike. And instead of fighting each other in divisiveness, we'll start talking about policy, and we'll start talking about issues and make much, much better decisions. And that's one of the reasons why I think I can get done these things that I want to get done, closing that corporate loophole and killing gerrymandering and the rest. Because once Dan Patrick's gone, the more moderate point of view will emerge, and then we can start acting like Texans again, and it'll be wonderful.
Absolutely. So now, Mike, are you up with TV commercials, radio commercials, or are you doing it on the budget, a new technique?
Well, digital is so effective. I suspect that we'll put all of our money into digital because it's really effective. I got the highest end team I don't think anybody's got a higher tech team than I do. I don't want to get into too many of the details, but we know who our voters are. We know where they live. We know what they listen to, what they like, what they read. We know what they respond to, whether they'll vote or not. You can do this in a very large scale and do it very cost effectively. And we've been very, very pleased with what we've been able to do in the digital arena. 65% of Texans get all of their information digitally.
Right.
And so we have access to all of those channels, and we can reach them. So it's very much a hype. Like I said, we've always known that we're not going to outraise them. I mean, corruption is what drives campaign finance, and we ain't corrupt. So we've always known that we're never going to outraise them. So we're going to have to outsmart them, which we're doing.
That is great, and it's great to see that that you're using the digital platform to do that, because that's one thing that I've known for a long time. It's about first touch. In other words, you're touching the people. Secondly, and that I noticed you've been doing. You've been all over the state trying to let people know your face and get people involved with you. And tell us how that's going. How's Flesh to Flesh going?
Oh, it's terrific. I call the campaign High Tech, High Touch. My man Spencer here, my right-hand man, is with me. He's actually holding the camera. He's also multitasking, keeping up with emails and so forth. So, but he and I have been traveling the state. I've got a Ford F-150, old paint. Now has about 145,000 miles on it. We had to buy our third set of tires the other day. It's a high-tech, high-touch campaign, as I've said, and it's a wonderful experience. And, not only, there's three things good to say about this kind of campaigning. One, you get to get out there and talk to people and get your name out there. That's very important. And then technology, what you do with it digitally, you shake one person's hand and have a nice conversation with them. And then 10,000 people and 15,000 people have interacted with you because they saw that and they're with you in such and such way. So, one, it gets you out there talking to people. Two, you learn. That's the real beauty of it, is because I try to listen as much as I talk. And if you really want to know what's on people's minds and what they care about in life and what their values are, you go out and talk to them. Dan Patrick isn't talking to people.
I know.
He has scared. Almost no public events.
He's scared.
He's not only is he not debating, but he's not even talking to people. He doesn't know what's on their mind. So the second thing is you get to find out what your fellow Texans are thinking. You're much more effective in terms of campaigning, much better to position to be a public servant, which is what this is all about. And the third thing that's joyful about it is you get to love on this state. This is a great state, and it's filled with the coolest people. You can go to a Baptist church and be on your feet in the morning, and you can be eating barbecue in West Texas in the evening, and drive through it, stop at the Valero station, get you a Cliff Bar and a Coke, and talk to people. And it's a beautiful state. It's a wonderful state. It's full of so many fabulous people. It's tiring, but it's very joyful.
So I imagine you have a huge hotel bills from staying all over the state, huh?
Well, Holiday Inn Express, which is where we always stay because we can stay real cheap.
Uh-huh.
We are very, very
frugal.
We're very parsimonious. If people give us money, boy, I tell you what, we don't waste it on anything except winning this election. So we'll roll up to a Holiday Inn Express, and they think I'm a hero because I'm there just about every night. It's one of the reasons why I can't lose weight, because they feed me biscuits and gravy every morning, and I love biscuits and gravy.
I hear you,
I'll
Mike.
have eggs, turkey sausage, biscuits and gravy, man, every morning.
Folks, you've been listening to Mike Collier, the next Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Texas. Mike Collier, thank you so kindly for having been with me today. Give me some 30 seconds for folks, and then we'll be out of here.
Well, I'll tell you what, this is all about public education. It's about teachers. It's about retired teachers. It's about our children. It's about the future of our state. We have other problems that we need to solve, but let me tell you something. Every teacher, every retired teacher, every parent, everybody who has a passion for public education and for leveling that playing field and responding to the moral imperative of a great education needs to vote for me, Mike Collier.
That is one of those things when you have several channels on one channel. Anyhow, Mike Collier, thank you so kindly again for being with us. Folks that are listening, remember to share. This will be up on podcast by the end of the night, and more than so, we are going to have some special cuts with some special words from Mike Collier. Again, Mike, thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful rest of the day, and you keep it going, because again, I'll be going to your inauguration in Austin, Texas in January.
Well, I look forward. I hope you're standing right next to me, my friend.
Absolutely, sir. You take care, my friend.
Okay.
Great. Folks, that was Mike Collier. And remember, this is a progressive show for Texas and what we need, not only for Texas, for the entire country. But today, we concentrated mostly on Texas because we had to get that done. Mike Collier is a great guy. Mike Collier is going to do it. Mike Collier, I'm pretty darn sure, is going to be the next lieutenant governor of Texas. And specifically because he's been going around talking to people. He's been going around doing all the work we expect of candidates to do. Folks, if you've not joined, if you've not become a member of Politics Done Right, subscriber of Politics Done Right, please consider doing so. Go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Politics Done Right. What we have here for you now is how to make America utopia. Those of you who subscribe in the next few days will be partners within the creation of this book. Actually, the first chapter is already written. We're doing some changes to the chapter, or so rather cleanup of the chapter, and it will be posted online. And all of you who become subscribers at patreon.com/Politics Done Right, you will see the first chapter. We've just established the group for the book as well. How to Make America Utopia is the name of the group. And we're going to be discussing with you about this group. And if you have ideas that you want when we're talking about how we're going to make a better America, I want to hear your voices as well. I want to hear what you have to say. Because you know what? America will, Trump always talk about America, make America great again. It's not about making America great again. It's about making America America. What America is supposed to be. So, folks, go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Politics Done Right, and be a part of the family. Be a subscriber. We promise to bring you the Texas politicians and others. Not only Texas politicians, we actually brought you, Beto O'Rourke. We brought you Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We brought you the woman from the Sex and the City. We brought you a whole lot of progressive candidates. In fact, last month at Netroots Nation, the largest political blogging conference in the country, I did 46 interviews. 46 interviews with progressives, with progressive candidates, with progressive activists, and the works. And if you notice, I think I've already processed 20-something of them and put them out in blogs. This is what we're all about. It's a lot of work, but this is how we're going to make a better America, a better Texas, a better everywhere. So please go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Politics Done Right, and become a member. But you know what, folks? At this point in time, we're at the end of the show. And you know how I close this baby by simply telling you, we are, what do I say? This is Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto. Hey, you know what? What is so funny? You speak with Mike Collier and you forget the way you leave. This is Egberto Willies, Politics Done Right. I am out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
1, 2, 3, 4.